My name is Arturo Alonzo Sandoval, and I go by Alonzo because there's a Cuban trumpet player that's Arturo Sandoval. And I always want to be distinguished differently from him. My artwork this time became a challenge when Nancy literally refused my first studies. And so I had to go back in and decide what I was going to be doing. And so the Motherboard series began for me in the context a couple of years ago when I wanted to do a different form of pattern fusion. Pattern fusion is basically the overall series theme for my work, bringing together materials and the weaving structure to fuse another form on the surface of these art quilts. So when I began working with pattern fusion, I began with textile motifs, plain weave, twill weave, verticals, bars, horizontal bars, elements with a material that began necessarily from the textile history. When I decided to think about doing motherboards, as an academic who uses the computer, I went online and just typed motherboard images. And all of a sudden, all these beautiful images popped up. And motherboards, of course, go inside a computer, and they hold all the analog material in ones and O's. And when I finished my first parts of my motherboard series, which Nancy saw in the Innovation exhibition in Sheboygan, Michigan, she liked them. But when I wanted to do these, I wanted to do something that was slightly different. These still have a woven element in the construction process, but it was cut out after the pieces had been backed because they were just too visually busy. And so I didn't like that checkerboard pattern on the surface. I thought it took away from the actual vertical elements. So in these pieces, I try my best when I find these designs online to not necessarily replicate them exactly, but to replicate the major areas that would be in the motherboard. The vertical elements that would hold DRAM or RAM, the memory elements. The elements that are the fans on the inside of them that keep the computer cool. And other elements like these holographic little spots that are on there that seem to be, I don't know if they're soldering posts, elements, or if they're actually functional. But I use them a lot, and I like the way they work. And then I began to incorporate circular and vertical elements in the work to get back to that idea of the motherboard and the austerity of the image, which is very different than anything else in the show. It comes from that technology. And so the technology, which I'm embracing, brings me to, I think one of my more successful ideas, bringing analog materials, Mylar, 35 millimeter microfilm, and stitching, and high-tech materials as holographic tape and film, together with the idea of a motherboard which houses that, but here I'm now visually creating that same essence with material that you can actually read. So you can read the imagery on the surface, and the surface itself becomes the ones and O's in theory. So I really enjoyed this piece. I think, as I talked with Nancy earlier, that this is my best work so far. And I think an artist should be making their best work the last. Because everybody says, what's your favorite work? It should be really what you're creating in the last time you create, before you fall over. But I want to thank Nancy for, again, challenging me and for putting me in this show, because it just really opened my eyes to see how beautiful scale is again. Because that's one of the things that I missed in many quilt shows, even those which I jury, that there's not this effort to make something magnificent, larger than life, so that you can immerse yourself in it and be environmentally part of the quilt.